Hey YouTube, this is Travis with Nostalgic Duels. I just wanted to do a review on my fire deck. If there was anything that Zach didn't like, it was the light deck for certain cards, and it was definitely this fire deck for certain cards. Nonetheless, this actually took a while to make as well as the light deck. Not the longest time, but it did take some time. Just like the light deck, it is a uni attributed deck. It's only just fire, as you can see. And I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to do something different with this. I'm actually just going to flip the deck over. We're going to start from the bottom all the way up. Alright? Okie dokie. Let's get this started. Alright, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start with the magic or spell card section. See, I got Mystical Space Typhoon. I got two of them in here. They're really good at getting rid of other cards. And you can't really get rid of cards if they're activating them. Like, let's say they activate Trap Hole. You can use this card, it'll destroy Trap Hole, but it won't negate the ability, so it will still get rid of the monster. But nonetheless, to gamble your chances of maybe getting the upper hand in the duel, while they have them face down, you can go ahead and do this first before summoning monsters or attacking, and see if you can get that higher chance of destroying them. Alright, for my next card, I do have this card called Fighting Spirit. It's a pretty good card. What it does is when monster is equipped, it gains 300 attack for each monster that your opponent controls, which is a pretty good card. It can actually maybe help you a little bit. And if it were to be destroyed, let's say that monster did get destroyed in battle, and was sent to the graveyard, you can actually use this as the sacrifice instead. So you can use this, and this card would be destroyed, and that monster would still stay on the field. So it's actually a pretty cool card. It's like a shield with a booster effect, or a shield with benefits. Alright, for my next one, and this actually is it's like almost critical for this deck because of a strategy. I'll show you the other cards eventually. You're going to see how the hand destruction works. Hand destruction is kind of like card destruction, except you only get rid of 2 specific cards. And then after that, then each player will draw 2 cards. So it is really cool. It's really good, and it can help you in a duel. And like I said, it's actually part of like a strategy for this deck, so you'll see later on. Molten Destruction, obviously because it's the fire deck, a fired field card would help a lot. It increases all fire type monsters by like 500. So yeah, it's essential for this deck. Essentially, because since Molten Destruction is actually part of another strategy too for this deck. Thunder Short. It's a very simple card. Your opponent gets 400 points of damage for each monster they control. So each monster on their field, they get 400 points of damage. So it's a nice way to get some quick life point damage. Kind of like Sparks, or anything like that. But, except with a lot more damage, obviously. And Burden of the Mighty. I remember Zach gave me this card, and he didn't like it too much when it was used against him. And that's only because of the fact that with Burden of the Mighty, monsters lose 100 points times their level. So, like, if they're level 8, they lose 800 life points in attack. Or 800 attack. I'll say it like that. And God to hope that you don't have level 10 monsters with you, because that would be a lot of points they would lose. A whole 1,000 attack. Alright, that was pretty much it to my spell zone, my spell magic. So now let's go ahead and we'll move on to the trap zone. Just making sure that we have all that we're going to do for this. Because this deck is well fortified in that sense. Alright, let's go ahead and we're going to get this started. Let me see. Alright, my next card I have is Dust Tornado, and as you can see I have 3 of them. They're just like Mystical Space Typhoons, except they're just the trap version of that card. They pretty much destroy one magic or trap card, and like I said about Mystical Space Typhoon, if someone activates a card, Unlike that, you cannot just simply activate this to destroy that card. Neither can you do it when it's like just an activation. You have to do it pretty much after the card has been activated and its effect went through, because it will not destroy the effect. Or it will not negate the effect, it would only destroy the card. So it's unfortunate, but it still does, like I said before with Mystical Space Typhoon, you can still do like that gambling thing where after it's your turn, before you summon a monster or attack, you can activate these cards and see if they fight back with any other cards that they might have. So it's a really good way of getting the opponent's strategy out. Alright, for my next three, and not all of them were in threes, by the way, just only certain ones. For my next three, I have Blast with Chain. This is actually a pretty decent card. It's not very bad. I got like a couple of these from booster pack openings. I'm not so sure if Zach gave me this or not, one of them or not. But with Blast with Chain, what it does is it increases your monster's attack by 500, and it only works well when the monster is destroyed by a card effect. Like if Dark Hole is to come into effect and it destroys all the monsters in that case, then this card will come into effect. But actually, let me do a better demonstration or a better analogy. When Maneater Bug uses its ability and it destroys a monster, you can actually use this ability, and what it does is it'll actually destroy one monster on the field if that monster that you have equipped to was destroyed by a card effect. So yeah, in that case, like let's say they did that with Maneater Bug, well then you can choose a monster on their field and destroy it as well. Pretty good. I like it. Alright, for my next set of three, and I guarantee you after that they're no longer in threes, are Trap Hole. Trap Hole is a very essential card to have. The only thing now you just really need to worry about nowadays is sorry if I'm doing this shaking it so much, is the special summons, because Trap Hole does not negate special summons. It only destroys monsters that were normal summoned, flip summoned, technicality, if you want to get a little technical with it, ritual summoned. Fusion summon does not count for certain ones. On a technical scale, fusion summons are special summons for the most part. But ritual summons, tribute summons, normal and flips, those are all the same thing. Rituals and tributes are all normal summons, and some ritual summons are normal. But otherwise, if it's a normal summon or flip summon, if it's 1,000 points or more in attack, it will be destroyed. So it's a really good card to have. And it might help you in some duels. Alright, for my next duo, I have the all nostalgic Call of the Haunted. Call of the Haunted is a pretty good card to have. It's basically a permanent monster reborn, with the exception that you cannot just keep reviving unless you have more than one copy. What it pretty much does is it has a lot of words on this card, and all it's saying is monster can be brought back from the graveyard and it can stay on the field as long as this card's on the field, but when that monster is destroyed, this card is destroyed too. It's pretty much what it's saying. And of course you have to summon it in attack mode. Alright, this is where it starts getting interesting. I have two Nightmare Wheel cards, and this is pretty interesting. I like it. This is what pretty much makes that strategy of this deck. Not the one that I was telling you before with hand destruction. This is not part of that strategy. I'm going to tell you more about that one. But this is also another strategy I call like the Light Point Leech strategy. With this deck, Nightmare Wheel, what these two cards do is that it will, like if a monster declares an attack, and let's say it's a very strong monster and you might lose the duel because of it, you can activate this card, and what happens is that this card will stop their attack, and that monster cannot change battle phases. So he cannot go into a defense, he can't even attack, and he can't go anywhere else, unless he's tributed or any other of the such. Then, for each turn, for each standby phase that they have that monster on the field, they lose 500 life points. So if you have like both of these, then they'll lose 1,000 each turn. It's a very, very good card to have in a deck, because it really puts it to them, since they don't really know how, like, they don't know what to do except for destroying their own monsters. Also part of that life point leech strategy is the card Backfire. For every fire deck, it's very essential to have something like this called Backfire, and it only works with fire type monsters. What it does is, it will, once a fire monster gets destroyed, the opponent will lose 500 life points for each fire monster that gets destroyed in battle, or card effect. And in this case, if you have both of them, that's yet another 1,000. So if you had both Backfires on the field and both Nightmare Wheels, then that's a whopping 2,000 points of damage right there on the bat. Alright, now the rest of these cards are going to be single. I love that design for the bed, by the way. So now the rest of them are going to be single. So if we go on, we'll see Spellbinding Circle. It's a very nostalgic card. I wish I could probably have this as like a holo or rare, because it probably would look cool. But Spellbinding Circle, pretty much just, unlike the series, the anime series, it does not lose 700 points. All it does is keep the monster in play, and it cannot change the battle phase. It can't basically leave the field unless tribute, monster effect that would destroy, if you decide to destroy your own monster, such of the sort. Needle Sealing. Needle Sealing is a interesting and unique card because it's pretty much like a decision-making factor. It's one of those things. When the opponent has if there's 4 or more monsters on the field, and you decide you want to use this just to see if you can get the upper hand in the duel, you can go ahead and use this card, and it'll destroy all face-ups on the field. So that includes yours as well as your opponent's. And just hope that you don't have any card that was worth destroying, because that could be really bad, unless you have anything that would revive a card. Alright, for my next one, Magic Jammer. It is an essential card to have, but it's one of those that if you're willing to give up something, then you can destroy something in return. That type of theory. Kind of like the equivalent exchange theory. But what Magic Jammer does is, it's a counter card. So if a trap card was to be or a magic card was to be activated and or spell, you can use this right after to stop that. And unlike Mystical Space Typhoon and Dust Tornado, you can destroy it and negate the effect. All you have to do is just discard one card, and you'll be able to do so. So it is a pretty good card to have. Make sure you have those throwaway cards. Alright, Miracle's Wake. Very good card to have. To me, this card reminds me of Time Machine, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it in effect. What Miracle's Wake does is that the monster, let's say you just did battle recently, and you really needed that monster for a tribute or for a ritual, or for anything in that matter. You don't need to worry. You can use this Miracle Wake card, and what this trap card does is, like I said, is just like Time Machine. Right after battle is over, you can use this card, and what it does is it will revive the monster that was just recently destroyed by battle. If you don't believe me, I'm going to read it off by the card itself. And it says, target one monster that was destroyed by battle and sent to your graveyard this turn. Special summon it from your graveyard. So like the card said, you can special summon it immediately right after it was destroyed if you need it. So this is really good of getting any cards that you might need for like any special summons or anything like that. Waboku, very essential in all decks. What this card does, it's pretty much a Karibo. It protects you for that one battle turn, or battle phase. Kunai with Chain. Now I can say that this card is a very essential card to have in all decks as well, but it might work just into certain few specialty decks. Because this, again, does help a lot. What Kunai with Chain does, you can actually use both of its effects at the same time. That's why it will say on there simultaneously, which means you can choose to activate it if you want, or you can activate both at the same time. What it does is, it pretty much does just like what the series says. Just like how Joey used it, it puts the monster into defense mode. That I don't know if it's true, but it will put the card into defense mode for the attacking monster, so it will negate it, and it'll increase, you can increase any monster by 500 points, even if it's the card that was targeted for the attack. So you might have that upper hand if you do that. So like I said, it's good, but it's not meant for all decks, just like any other card. Draining Shield, very essential for all decks. I don't say that very much because not all cards are meant for every single deck. Your custom decks that you tailored yourself, or that you modified from recent structure decks or starter decks, they all have their own specialty cards, so not everything's meant for everyone. But Draining Shield is definitely meant for every single deck. What Draining Shield does is it pretty much negates the attack, and you gain in life points what that monster's attack was, or what that monster's attack is. So it's a very good card to have. Alright, I think that's it for all my... Yep, that's pretty much it for all my trap cards. So now we moved from our magic of traps and straight to the monsters. So now we have Charcoal and Pachi, or Charcoal and Patchy. I don't know how you would pronounce that. And the reason why I have him in this deck is because of its defense. It has pretty good defense for level 1, 2100. So, nonetheless, it's still a good card. So that's pretty much it to that. For my next two, I have these lovely Flameville Pawns. Flameville Pawns, now, the reason why you might think, well, these two cards suck, they have like practically nothing for their stats. That's true, but their effects do make up for that, and I'll show you more about that later in this review. But yes, they are level 1s, they do kind of suck, as if most people would say, not if not everybody. Even I think they suck. But when I read the ability, I looked at it, I'm like, oh, this is not so bad. It's a pretty good effect, and it could possibly help me in battle. So I decided to go ahead and add them to the deck because they are going to be essential in this for this deck. Now, sooner or later, I will be getting to that strategy I was telling you about with hand destruction, but now it's time for the level 4s, and as you can see, the level 4s have the bulk of this deck along with the trap cards. Alright, so let's do this. Blazing Impachi is my next two cards, or are my next two cards. And the reason why I have him in here is because he's unique. Not every monster in any of my decks, have a very odd stats. 1850, even though technically that is an even card because 50 is an even number since it can't be divided by 2. But in this case, the reason why I say they're odd is because if you look at this one, Flame Pone, or even Charcoal and Pachi, they have just solid 100, 200. They don't have like 50 points, 30 points, 90 points. They don't have any of that. So that's why I consider this to be like unique, that they're a little off in that sense. And it can also help you too, because if you're battling a monster that's 1800, you can get that 50 point of damage because you're simply just a little bit higher than that monster. So that's pretty much it with Blazing Impachi. Charcoal Impachi, Blazing Impachi. Should make a Black Impachi deck. Alright, big strategy here. Solar Flare Dragon. Now, most people might not think, because Solar Flare Dragon's ability is actually pretty kick-ass, and since it is part of this fire deck, that it's actually very essential for its ability as well. Not only is the 1500 and the 1000 pretty good, 1000 sucks for defense, but hey, it works for some people, doesn't work for everybody. This card is a beast because if it has another fire type, that you can actually protect this card. It's invulnerable, invincible to any attack because it cannot be targeted if there's another fire type. Hence, if both of these cards, because it does not specify what cards are not supposed to be, like, you know how some cards say, oh, you can revive all the cards in the world except for this monster. It does not specify that it's invulnerable with any fire monster, or it's not invincible with certain fire monsters. It's invincible with any fire monster, as long as you can keep that monster on the field. Now, see? It does not say, like, I'm going to look at the effect. It does not say, with the exception of Solar Flare or Dragon. So, you can actually use these cards in succession, and guess what? You're pretty much unstoppable. Because as long as there's another fire monster, it cannot be destroyed by battle. It can't even be targeted as an attack target. Which means these cards will work simultaneously with each other. Which would mean that you basically cannot be destroyed. Simple as that. But if there is a type of rule or loophole or exception to that, then yeah, you can go ahead and please put that in the comments below. I know you can destroy these cards, like, obviously, Dark Hole, Raigeki, all of those cards can destroy these, but, I mean, like, monsters, they cannot be destroyed. Obviously, if you have an effect that destroys one monster, that can be the loophole, like, if this was to be destroyed, yeah, now it's exposed, but if not, then they're pretty much unstoppable duo. And it's also its other ability that it does 500 points per turn. This is what I conclude for that Light Point Leech strategy. You can have those backfires here, and the other two can have the Nightmare's Wheel. Add this, and that's a whopping already 3,000 points. Plus a residual 2,000 point damage per turn because of the two Nightmare Wheels, and these two do 500 per standby phase as well. So it's a residual 2,000 points of damage. This deck could definitely wipe out your light points if you're not careful. Of course, it can come backfiring at the same time as well. So just be careful. Alright. Also, Inferno. This was with the original deck itself, along with the Solar Flare's Dragons, so I decided to keep it in there. The reason why I say this is pretty much my made deck is because the deck itself, I lost the whole deck, so it's pretty much been wiped out throughout time. But I do have some of the remnants of what the original deck was, so I made my own deck. So technically this is not even a modified deck, as some might say. Like, a modified deck is if you take the original deck. Like, I have the zombie deck, and that deck is a modified deck because I just added on to it. I didn't do that many changes to it. But this is a completely restructured deck, so this is technically a custom made deck that I did, because I only have little to none of the original cards, so most of it's actually made from other cards. But nonetheless, these two cards are interesting, because all you have to do is banish a fire monster to special summon these. So it can definitely bypass Trap Hole and any of those kind of things. But what's really cool, not only because of the defense is good, not gonna lie, that's a pretty decent defense, but the reason why I say this is pretty cool is because if this card actually manages to destroy a monster, whether it's in defense or attack, it actually does a whopping 1,500 points of damage. So it's a very, 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 very good card. Now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to move this over a little bit because it did say that my recording device was about to die. So I'm going to go ahead, I'll hook this up, and we're going to continue with our videos. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and continue with our videos. And we have these. Again, these were part of the original, but I don't have the third one because I was so smart enough not to add the third one. But UFO Turtle, it's a very unique card as well. What it does, it pretty much just gets another card out. So it's an easy throwaway card. Alright. Alrighty, you remember when I said those Flameville Pawns, there was a reason why? Well, this is the reason why. Because with Flameville Pawn, when it's destroyed, you can actually take a card out from your deck and add it to your hand that has 200 points of defense or less. In this case, Flameville Fire Dog is also that card. And I do have other cards in here like the Flamin' Impachi and some other cards you're going to see in just a moment that have 200 or less. So that's where that Flameville Pawn comes in. With this card, it's actually pretty beast. This is an easy way to get cards out on the field, by the way. Because if this card manages to destroy a monster by battle, then you can summon a card with 200 or less defense, with the exception of Flameville Fire Dog. Hence, the same card. You cannot summon the same thing because that would be a double summon ability. But you can summon him if you had him in your hand, and you can use the effects simultaneously as well, as long as both monsters attack and successfully destroy a monster. Alright, these next two cards, Volcanic Rocket cards, they have no real reason in here. It's just that they're both 1900 attack. So it's an easy, nice jump start, if some might say. And it's a fire card, so I don't have the actual accelerator cards for these because they want the Blaze Accelerator, and I don't have that in this deck, so obviously I can't use the ability. But alright, this is going to be pretty cool. These next two cards are actually going to be pretty awesome. These cards they do have the fire, like those Volcano Warriors, or I forgot the cards. But remember those blade cards that were kind of like samurais engulfed in flames and they had like number 1 and number 2 in its name? Well, these are just kind of like that. They do have the 1700 and 1200 stats like the other cards do. But the pretty cool effect about these is that when they're normal summoned, if they were normal summoned successfully, they can't be destroyed. So if they were normal summoned successfully, you can actually target four fire monsters from your graveyard, and they all go straight into the deck. And after that, you get to draw 2 cards. So if you manage to summon both of these, you can go up to 8 cards. And it's ridiculous. 8 fire cards from your graveyard. You're pretty much monster reborning 8 monsters at once. 4 monsters at once. And you can put them straight into your deck. And then you get to draw 2 cards. So you actually might be able to get the chance that you might get your card that you just revived, and it's like, oh, I need this card, and put it on the field. So these cards are extremely good. I recommend if you want to get a fire deck, if you want to make a fire deck, have this in there because it's very helpful. Alright, my next one here is Flame Tiger. It's a decent stat monster. It has a pretty good ability, and the reason why I have it in here is because, like, let's say you've been drawing crappy cards, and even for a deck of this caliber, drawing cards is not always the best thing. It's like sometimes you get the good, sometimes you don't. And in this case, if you don't get any good cards for like the past 3 to 5 turns, and 3 to 5 turns can definitely change a duel, if not conclude the duel. But anyways, with Flame Tiger, if you don't want to draw that turn, you don't have to. You just simply take him back from the graveyard and special summon him, because that's its ability. Instead of doing your draw phase, you can special summon him from the graveyard. So it's really good. And if you wanted to use him for a monster or so, that would be extremely helpful as well. Alright, Cholan the Prophet. He's probably one of those trip cards or troll cards, because with Cholan the Prophet, even though he has 18 and he is one of those 200 marks, so you can use him as well as this card that has 0. But Cholan the Prophet is very, very he's kind of like that Shockmaster now with the XYZ, the Shockmaster card, and with the exception that you don't have to get rid of cards to use its ability. This guy is a once per turn deal, and it says once per turn, you can declare either a spell or trap and target one set card your opponent's spell and trap card zone. So what it's saying is you can target one spell or trap card in there, in that area. And you get to look at the target. If it is the target that you declared, or if it's the declared target type, it cannot be activated. Let's say like oh, I want trap card. And when they flip it over, and if it's a trap card, they cannot use that card for that whole turn. They can't even activate it. It's done. So it's a really good card change. And it's really good when it comes to blocking. And you can also spam it too. Alright, Flame Ruler. As you can see, yeah, I went through the little bit of test of time. The reason why I have this card in here is because of its ability. Yes, it has 15, 16. It's a decent card. It's not the best, but otherwise it is a pretty good card because what it does, it can act like a double summon. So it's kind of like that Kaiser Seahorse, to where you can do a double summon with it as long as you have this card. So it's pretty good with that effect. Yep, that pretty much concludes all of our level 4s. Now we're going to be moving on to the higher level cards. So I'm just going to go ahead and we'll do it one by one. Alright, Woodborg Impachi. The reason why I have him on the field is because, or have him in this deck, is because of this Swap and Dark Magician defense, and he's also a fire type. And he's easy because I can just use one monster to summon him. So he's very good to have. King Pyron. Now, it might be in a debate whether or not I should have him in the level 4s or the level 5s, and the reason why I say that is because King Pyron, even though he's a level 5, you don't actually need to sacrifice a monster. You can use him as a normal summon, so you can bypass the star on him. And if you do use him as a normal summon, he becomes an effect monster. If not, you do sacrifice one monster for him, he's a normal monster. But if you do and he's an effect monster, the cool thing about it is that for the sacrifice of the attack, you don't, if you use this ability, you don't attack. But with his ability, for his horoscoped monster, he does 1,000 points of damage once per turn. So you can say, I used the ability. Actually, it doesn't say that you can't attack, so you can use this ability and then you can actually go for the attack. So it's a pretty cool ability. So yeah, I don't know why they made a horoscope type monster here, but hey, horoscopes like Scorpio, Gemini, Taurus, Cancer, those type of horoscopes. So that's pretty cool. Well, Lovable Lancelord, I'm contemplating whether or not to leave him in this deck. He's pretty good. He's a decent monster, don't get me wrong. And he's level 6. So level 5s and 6s can be summoned with one monster. I'm not so sure if level 8s or higher need 3 or 2. But I'm just going to say for this review, 2 or 3. I'm going to say 3 for this review. But go ahead and put in the comments below what the real amount is for that. I keep forgetting. I'm used to doing 3 monsters. But what Lovable Lancelord does is like and unlike King Pyron, you can also summon him without tributing. The only issue with that is at the end of the turn he is destroyed. And I'm just going to read it from the card itself. It's pretty cool looking. I like how he looks. It's a fire monster and he has some decent stats. But what his ability is, it says, you can normal summon this card without tributing. If you do, during the end phase, send it to the graveyard. When this card on the field is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can target one of your banished fire monsters and add that target to your hand. So if you do manage to banish any cards, then you actually have a strong chance of bringing them back. So it's pretty cool. Alright, now we get to the real part. Sorry, I was just counting on something. Alright, there are many variations of this card. There's one for the water deck, there's one for, I'm pretty sure for the earth deck. I think I've seen one for the earth. I know I used to have the one for water. There's this one. There's a lot of variations of this card, but Thessalos, the Firestorm Monarch. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Thestalos, but please forgive me if I'm saying it wrong. But Thestalos, the Firestorm Monarch. This card has pretty good stats, and the ability is actually very good too. It kind of acts like a Vampire Queen, Vampire Queen, Vampire Lord, and Vampire Genesis. If you remember those three cards, their abilities, it's just basically the same thing. When this card is tribute summoned, except when it's tribute summoned successfully, you can randomly discard one card from your opponent's hand to the graveyard. But if the discarded card was a monster card, you get to inflict damage to your opponent's life points equal to the level of the monster times 100. So if they had that, like I said, if by any chance they had that level 10 card or higher, pretty sure I don't think there's anything higher than 10, but if they had that level 10 card, that's quite a bit of life points there. Alright, for my next card, the next level 6 are the two Mana Core of Darkness. Now, they're pretty cool. I like them. This is where I'm going to say this is getting to that strategy I was telling you about with hand destruction. Mana Core of Darkness. It's a good card to have. It has decent stats. And the best part about it is its ability. The ability is when it's destroyed and sent to the graveyard, doesn't matter whether it's by battle or by card effect, you can actually, if you get rid of one beast warrior or winged beast type monster from your hand, you can actually special summon it back to the graveyard, back from the graveyard to the field, which is extremely good. So if you wanted to get rid of the card, you can simply discard it if you have too many cards in your hand. You can't just randomly discard in Yu-Gi-Oh! Because then it's questionable unless it's a card effect, such as Hand of Destruction. You can use this, and probably going to be the next few cards later. Yep, I just looked at it. It'll be the next couple cards where you'll see that this strategy will work well, and it's an easy way to get them both summoned on the field. So it's an easy way to overpower your opponent at the same time. This next card is very essential in any fire deck because the ability is just awesome. Yeah, that one's awesome too. I love Winged Dragon. This one is the one I'm talking about. Firestorm Prominence. Firestorm Prominence is a very good card. Regardless of the stats that it has, this level 7 actually has a kick-ass ability. And pretty much it does protect your monsters, but at the same time it doesn't protect your opponents. So he would have to make sure he has cards that would protect from this ability. What it does is, once the card gets destroyed, it destroys all of your opponent's face down. When this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, destroy all face down and non-fire type monsters. So remember, if you're going to have them, make sure they're face up, because if they're face down, the better be cards you're going to throw away. Because this card will decimate the field if your opponent doesn't have any fire cards. Alright, this will actually conclude for that one ability, or that one strategy I was telling you about, with a hand destruction combo. This right here is what sums that up. The famous Sacred Phoenix of Nephthys, or Nephthys. I really don't know how to pronounce that. But these two abilities, even with those Mana Core of Darkness, you can actually use this. Make sure you only use one, because that would be bad to use both of them. And the only reason why I say that, it's not bad. They're both strong. They're 2400 attack. Yeah, they're strong. Their ability is that, and I'll show you why, that they might not be that great to have them both on the field. Because when Sacred Phoenix is destroyed, sent to the graveyard, whether it's by card, is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, hence Mana Core of Darkness and that card destruction, hand destruction card, it gets special summoned the very next turn.
And once it gets special summoned, it destroys all magic and trap cards on your opponent's side of the field. So now they're going to be exposed, but if you have two of them, it only works with one. It doesn't like coat that field and say you can't put any more cards. If the magic or traps you have, send them to the graveyard instead. That would be stupid, and this card would be banned if that was the case. But it's still a very good card. It'll just decimate all magic and traps on your opponent's side of the field, and it's 2400. So if you do manage to do both of them, just keep in mind only one of the effects will be active, because they'll both act as one, and it will be an easy way to overpower. Like if you had these and you had these two, that's an overpowered, that's like an OP field. So it's a very good way to do a lot of things with a duel. Alright, my last two cards I'm just going to show you. Tyrant Dragon is a very, very good card. It's kind of like the ultimate Tyranno card, because, well, not exactly. I forgot the card's name I have. I think it's like Falcon Warrior or something. It only has like 1100 attack, but the ability for that card is like it can attack twice. And with this card, it can do the same thing. Like, it can attack in succession, only if it destroys a card. But what's really cool with this, it's just like Mirage Dragon, except your opponents obviously can use trap cards. But during your battle phase, if your opponent controls a monster after the card's first attack, so if there's still another monster, like let's say this card was on the field after I destroy like this card, I can attack again and destroy this card as well. That was the next card I was going to show you, by the way. But I can destroy again, I can attack again, and you can't use any traps for that whole thing that target this card. So you can negate the effect of any trap card that targets this card and destroy that trap card. So it's very good. It's a lot like my water dragon thing that I have here, White Knight Dragon. And I'll be able to do that review soon. And you can destroy the trap card. If this card is special summoned, by the way, from the graveyard, this is the only kicker. If it was special summoned from the graveyard by another card's effect, you must tribute one dragon type. So it is really good to have in a dragon deck. I was actually contemplating on putting it in my dragon deck. As you guys see on my channel, I do have the dragon review. I have updated the deck a little bit by just taking some cards away. That's it. But otherwise, this card I was thinking about putting in there because I can easily get rid of a dragon card for it. So it's a very good card to have, and it has 2900 attack and 2500 defense. It's a very good card to have. Of course, being a level 8, it's not exactly... I think you have to sacrifice 3 monsters. Like I said, if I'm wrong, please put in the description or comments below about that, if it's 2 or 3, and it'll help me a lot to understand that theory, because I'm about to say the same thing with this level 9. The Eternal Flame Emperor. Now this was actually the original card for the original Fire Structure deck. But the reason why I say it's a custom deck like before is because most of the cards have been wiped out. There's like nothing left of those cards. So this is pretty much like the pinnacle, I guess, of this deck. But can't really consider it the pinnacle of the deck, because that strategy I told you about, those 2 strategies, are the pinnacle strategies, which would make those cards the best of the deck. But the Eternal Flame Emperor, it is an ultra rare, or I can't show you I guess I can't really show you the holograph on this because it's in a card sleeve. And might I say, I love this card sleeve. But nonetheless, it's still in it. It has some decent stats. Don't know why this card is the one that's holographed, yet this is the one that's stronger. I don't know, it's just my opinion of why. It's a very good fire card, and the best thing about it is, if you can summon this successfully, that's still a normal summon, by the way, tribute summon this successfully, so if you're able to normal it successfully, you can get rid of up to 5 fire monsters from your graveyard, and you remove them from play, And if you do that, you can destroy up to 5. It says destroy a number of spell or trap cards on the field pretty much equal to the numbers or the monster that you just removed from play. So if they had a full field of 5 face downs for magic and traps, if you summon it successfully and they don't activate a single card, or you manage to destroy it with a trap jammer, magic jammer, stuff like that, then you can remove up to 5, and it will destroy their magic and trap card zone, pretty much. So again, it's just like the Sacred Phoenix in that way, with the exception of fire monsters have to go to the lovely remove pile. So yeah, it's a pretty good card in that effect. It's just like the Sacred Phoenix. It can decimate by its ability, but it cannot be special summoned from the graveyard if you use a card effect to get rid of it. That's the only kicker. But otherwise, that's it to my fire deck. I love this deck, and I love my light deck. I also did a review with the light deck, so I'll put them side to side now. As you see, I love these two decks. This is my most spent, as you probably heard, or as you probably will hear, because I will post this video either today or tomorrow. But this is my most spent time, and this is actually my most strategic deck. They're both very strategic. Actually, I consider these to be my most strategic decks, because I have some other decks. You have to think with them sometimes too for those, but they're not the same when it comes to battling with them as my fire and light deck. So these are actually pretty cool. It took a while. As you can see, I have a whole bunch of monsters and traps and few magics. The reason why is because it's not really meant to be a support deck, but it's meant to be a deck where you can keep your monsters out on the field and hit those strategies, just hit those combos left and right. This is also a powerhouse deck as well, depending on how you play it. So yeah, this is Travis with Nostalgic Duelist. I'll see you all later. I'll probably post another video today. We'll see. Alright, YouTube, Travis signing out.